Folks, welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, streaming worldwide on PowerTalk1210.com. Please go to PowerTalk1210.com and stream all of our live shows. We do have work to do today, and it is an honor that you're part of the program. And without further ado, I want to bring in a cat that I've been waiting to talk to for some time. A bad bass player, one of the funkiest pocket bass players of all time. He's lived on through the psychedelic era, through the disco era, through the drum track, and through everything. And he still continues today, leading his own band, Mario Cipollina. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, Jake. Thanks. Did you have to mention the disco era, really?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, a lot of those Huey Lewis pop tunes were totally out of that disco era. Yeah, I know.
You're right. Yeah.
They got hooks, but they're just so sped up. But you know, Mario, it is so great to talk to you. And I wanted to ask you first off about the first time that you went to the Fillmore district when it was still just all black, when it was just a black performers, Chitlin Circuit style. And did you go there? Just break it down and talk about what you experienced there.
Well, my experiences in the Fillmore when I was a kid were that my brother played with Quicksilver Messenger Service, and so our family would go over to hear my brother play. We never missed a show, basically, and so a lot of the shows were at the Fillmore, the old Fillmore, and which is at Geary and Fillmore Streets, and I wasn't real black-white conscious at the time, and we were so kind of excited to be going to see my brother play that I never really, the whole experience of going there was about going to see the music, and I wasn't so much focusing on the trappings or the environment or the street scene, or the most street scene that I interacted with was all the other hippies in line and at the gig.
No, I mean again, you're totally spot on. But I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this whole story about this cat, Charles Sullivan, who owned the Fillmore. He didn't own it, but he ran the Fillmore. James Brown and the Flames would come in, and they'd do everything from Hayward to Concord. There were gigs everywhere. And then,
right. Well, here's the thing,
yeah.
Jake. I'm just 61 years old. So I was, when my brother was playing gigs in '65, I was 11. So
right.
So
I just wasn't sure.
I had no concept of who owned the building or what the any of the kind of politics stuff was at all.
Right. No, but I mean you can't shed any light on how Bill Graham took over he took over for Sullivan because he was found dead in his car, shot to death with $20,000 in cash.
Did not know that.
Right. So just
I knew Bill well. I've known Bill since I was a kid, but I did not know that story at all. I've never heard that.
Yeah. Well, that so one of the things, Mario, I wanted to you mentioned to me off the air that your band right now, you're trying to channel the year 1966, and I really want you to go into detail as to where you were in your. I mean, you were still young, obviously, very young, 12 maybe, 11, but
yeah.
Why do you want to go? Why are you trying? Why did you target that year specifically?
Because I like to jam. I think I consider. I mean, if I have any forte at all, it's being able to play improvisationally. That's and I really love doing it. It's much more. It's very interesting to me to do that, and it's challenging, and it's extremely rewarding when you do a good job and you're playing with people that are also listening, because it's really more about listening than what you play. You got to be listening, and you have to be cooperative, And so I've always been more of a team-oriented person than a solo kind of person. So it's jamming and improvisational playing is pretty much the epitome of teamwork. For it to really happen well, everyone has to be kind of working towards a goal of the moment of music that's in front of them.
So, can you apply that to 1966 for those of us that were not around at that time or born 12 years later? What was going on?
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. In '66, which I think that the press, it seems like somehow 1967 has gotten dubbed the Summer of Love, but the Be In and all the cool stuff that really started to turn the world around happened in '66. And like I said, I was 11. I started playing bass when I was 6. So by the time I was 11, I was playing electric. I was playing in bands, and as far as the what was the question again?
I love it. No, because when we've talked on the phone, and I mean, it was exhilarating just to talk to Mario one night. He was teaching, and then I had a chance to talk to him off air, and you were talking about the current band that you were put together.
Yeah, right. Okay.
You're trying to channel, and you're trying to channel 1966, and I'm trying to pinpoint. Like you said, 67 gets all the pub, but yet it was the germination, and that nest was 66. And I wanted you to go, and then you were talking about improvisation. So combine that and talk about it with your band today.
Well, see, Jake, I thought I was wandering, but I was actually on point.
And my whole show is stream of consciousness, so don't worry about it.
Where I was going was that I remember really distinctly noticing, that there was a correlation between the free form jamming bands, and even bands that weren't necessarily freeform. They were like the Dead and the Quicksilver. Those guys actually had formats that they worked from, but they did a lot of jamming, and all the bands did then. And that was really different because before that, it was you were looking at either you were listening to KDIA and the Black Station up here, or there was no FM radio. That was starting in '66, '67, but so you were hearing basically pop radio, and so everything was really formatted, short songs, short solos, and then when I started going to hear my brother play, I was hearing all these long drawn out sections where I knew the framework of the song because I'd gone to see my brother's band, and I'm hearing that every time they find these places where it would just go somewhere completely different, and you never ended up in the same place necessarily. And as a music lover and as a musician, I found that captivating. It was really captivating, and so.
Yeah, no,
and it's carried on into the rest of the world. I mean, all of a sudden, straight people were wearing ties with paisleys on. There's weird stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is so important because I want you to talk to the audience about improvising off a theme. You get to the head of the tune, and then all of a sudden you are just a melodic improviser, and because there are cats that think they're improvising, but they're just wanking it up there, and I want you to talk.
Right.
I want you to talk about the sophisticated quality of your brother, yourself. I mean, the cat, all those cats that were coming out of the Bay Area, Yorma, Garcia. That's jazz. There's no charts, but that's jazz, and I want you to talk about that.
My brother was great. I think I'm probably one of his very biggest fans. I just got to get that out. He was a one-of-a-kind person and player, and he was fantastic. But let's see. It's hard to say. I mean, I definitely I look as much for where to not play as to where to play. I can't tell you how many times in the last number of years since I left the news that I'll be, sitting in with some band or have playing with somebody, and sure enough they'll look at me and they'll go bass solo, and I won't do it. playing, I think, should happen when it really suits the song and feels right. And that something. In fact, that's another thing. A throwback to '66 was that people did solos when it felt right, and a solo could happen anytime. You never knew when it was going to happen. It might not ever happen. There was no formula to it, and I like that. And I also like not feeling compelled to play something because someone says play something, or because there's an expectation. I look as many times for when to stop playing, just shut up and leave a big gap so that there's a surge when I come back in, or if I'm playing a pattern, a lot of times I'll leave rests in the pattern where normally there might be a bass note. I'll pull it out there and let it just breathe for a second. So
I love it.
It's as much about what you're not playing as what you are in a way.
Well, no, I mean you're nailing this, but again, this is something that came out of your generation and even your brother's generation, that it's less is more. The silence is the music. It's what you don't play, not what. It's the Miles Davis kind of philosophy. But I went back and vetted you pretty hard as far as your early. We came in with a track from Soundhole, which was one of the funkiest white bands I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it was right up there with Tower of Power, and it's just
cool.
wildly sophisticated. But was there could you point to a drummer that you got a chance to play with that really helped you? Because listen, let's face it, funk. People might say, let's play something funky. Let's play some funky blues. Nobody said, let's go play funk.
Right.
Okay. So can you talk about a drummer that helped you learn how to play what you just described, where you would let it breathe? And
yeah, I tell you, I listened a lot. I listened to a lot of Tower of Power early on. Those guys that was a funky band.
Yeah.
Sly and the Family Stone was a band that I really liked and listened to a lot. And I don't know if you knew it, but I got to play. I had a band for a short while with Tony Williams.
Well, you don't get too far. Well, you don't get too far ahead right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but as far as drummers that I played with, I didn't really play with a lot. I mean, Bill Gibson from the Soundhole and the News, and I started playing together when I was a sophomore in high school. So I guess I was like 14 or something. And the way we learned to play was it was every day after school. We'd meet up, smoke a J, drink an imported beer, and
oh, that's great.
And jam from we'd get out of school about 2. We'd have our buzz on by about 3:30. We'd play till 7 every day, and we never called a time signature or a key.
Wow.
We would just freeform.
Dude, where are the tape? Where are the analog tapes of this stuff? I need the analogs of this.
What do you mean? Say again?
I need the analog cassettes of this stuff.
Oh God. Yeah, this is some funny stuff. This is some really funny old Soundhole stuff.
But you were just you were playing loose, and I mean you had your chops together, but there was no. It was more sophisticated than just jamming. I mean, you continue. I didn't mean to break.
You mean with Soundhole?
No, I'm just talking about you and Gibson woodshedding for 4 hours every day.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, there wasn't a bunch. I mean, really, if we did anything formatted, for the most part, we would if we were trying to learn other people's stuff ever, it was usually back then it was either Frank Zappa or Mahavishnu Orchestra. Those were the two bands that we were most dazzled with, and both of those bands it's extremely different in that the mothers of Frank Zappa and the mothers were basically orchestrated, absolutely orchestrated. Zappa was a brilliant writer and
arranger, yeah,
orchestral arranger, and he arranged his rock stuff like orchestra music. So it was very specific and very detailed and very complex. And Mahavishnu, on the other hand, was a band that had songs with frameworks and then mind-blowing jams. You know, are you familiar with that band at all?
Well, I mean, I've interviewed Billy Cobham 5 times. I've interviewed McLaughlin, twice.
There you
Like,
go. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, you're familiar.
I mean, so you were like a big Rick Laird guy, right? I mean, you were really getting off on that cat because he was the bass player.
that?
It was the bass player. That was the bass player with Mahavishnu during Intermounting Flame and Birds of Fire and Yanha, that kind of stuff.
Well, I thought that was Stanley Clark on Birds of Fire.
No. Well, maybe. I mean, Rick Laird was that cat.
Okay. Well, then, yeah, I guess I was. The name I remembered from back then, as far as bassist, was Stanley Clark, and honestly, that was always something that kind of baffled me. I never have figured out bass players that don't ever really get a pocket, solid pocket going, but there's no what Stanley's like, and those. I don't know if I want to say that type of player, but some of the jazz players are just so advanced that you can just do nothing but listen with your mouth open and.
Well, you probably you guys were getting off on Return to Forever too, right? I mean, that was the bass player. Stanley was in Return to Forever. Rick Laird was in Mahavishnu. But
that's what I guess. Yeah, you're probably right. I actually I've always gotten those two confused for some reason.
Well, don't worry about it. I'm here to keep you straight. But no, I wanna Mario. Did you see Coltrane live?
You're here to keep me straight, boy. You got a job.
Oh, I know I do. But it's okay. Did you get to see Coltrane live?
Never.
Did you see Miles?
My brother listened to a lot of Coltrane. Nope, never saw Miles live. Listened to some Miles Davis. My brother was quite an aficionado of Coltrane, but I was not super familiar with him.
Did your brother talk about what he got off on with Train? That's really fascinating to hear that and how he put it into his playing at all.
He didn't. John didn't talk about, most of what I know about his influences was just from what I experienced, witnessed as a kid. I used to hear him, downstairs listening to Link Ray records and I heard him playing Coltrane records too. I didn't understand jazz at the time. I thought jazz was music played by people who didn't know how to play their instrument. Yeah. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but
this is true.
When I was a kid, I thought jazz was music played by people who didn't know how to play an instrument.
When can I ask you if you could? I mean, I know it's going back, but do you remember a live experience in a jazz setting that where that changed for you fundamentally?
No, I don't. I didn't go see a lot of jazz stuff. I would say the closest I came to an awakening to jazz was some Herbie Hancock stuff, and I really, for some reason, my friends and I got really into George Duke for a while, who's a great player.
Rest in peace, man.
So between Herbie Hancock and George Duke, I guess that's pretty much, and the Return to Forever stuff. That's pretty much the most jazz I got in me. So.
You were. I mean, because Duke was in that pocket when you and Gibson were woodshedding. He was with Zappa. Right. He was with Zappa at that point, and he was with Cam.
Yeah, Duke. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Well, and George went to the same high school that Bill and I went to, also.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no, we all went to Tam.
That is so badass. Oh, that's great.
Bill Champlin, George Duke, Gibson, Huey went to Tam. A bunch of us went to Tam.
Oh my! Wait, Duke. Because I know Duke grew up in Marin City well before it became Marin, what it is today.
Right. Yeah.
I've done so much work on the, but I mean, can you, Mario? I mean, do you feel that that LSD, especially when in its legal form, in its purest form, how responsible was that for this? You talked about before being a team player. Listening very closely, improvising, and not necessarily, I mean, everything you go see today, and it's been like this going on 20, 30 years, it's very formulaic. The set lists are very standard. You don't have a lot of room for creativity. In fact, people are paying good money to see formula. And I want to know how much you believe that LSD was responsible for I'm talking about the audiences, because I think the audiences were there. They were just partying sometimes, and the music went over their head. But I'm just talking about the bands specifically, how responsible that the LSD was for the teamwork, the love, and ultimately the incredible improvisation.
Boy, that would be hard to really pin down. Although, I guess I can only speak from my own experience. If anything, I would say that the LSD more had to do with forming my personal philosophies, and which certainly goes straight into your music. So if you if for example, taking LSD on a regular basis leads me to feel a certain communion or the ability to be part of a communion, then it's going to reflect in my playing. And I think that in that sense, it might, certainly it's possible that it had a lot to do with it. I couldn't say for sure. I can only speak from my own experience, and I'm sure that it did affect my love of participating with somebody else in that, you know.
Could you personalize it further and
acid wasn't a great drug to play on by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I'm trying to figure that out too. I mean,
not so great.
But would you say? I mean, I want to know. For someone like myself, born in '78, I'm trying to figure out, like Quicksilver, the Dead, the acid tests. They were tripping. They were obviously tripping out playing. But I mean, it was difficult to play on acid.
Yeah, but they were also smoking reefer and stuff. So I mean, you couldn't really pin it to any one chemical. I don't think. I think that the real chemistry was happening amongst people more than between people and their drugs. There were all kinds of different drugs people were taking, and that people were enjoying, hating, getting busted for it, never getting busted for it. So, but the common denominator was the people. So I think that it had more to do with the people and their philosophies changing at that time, that by whatever means that was happening, either by the social environment, which was a lot of it, by the drugs, part of it, all of that. There was definitely a feeling in the air that things were changing. I remember that distinctly, and it was it was almost kind of scary until I did take a little bit of drugs here and there. It almost was kind of reassuring that it could be okay. But that's just me. I do remember distinctly feeling that there was something in the world changing, and it was pretty damn exciting, really.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that people were doing drugs, but there was no the technology didn't wall people off, so they were interacting together, and to me, it was very important. But in Soundhole, looking back on that band, I mean, you guys, why did that band not go farther?
I think we were. Soundhole, I think, went as far as it probably should have gone. Soundhole was a learning band. That was our band that we learned to play in, and I learned how to be a band leader and be a booking agent and doing all the, building PA systems and just learning the nuts and bolts. So Soundhole was an invaluable learning bed for me personally, and I know it was for everybody else. Were we a band that was, destined or should have gone further? Well, we did. We became Huey Lewis and the News.
And were you backing up Van Morrison? That's what I read.
Early on, yeah. We backed Van for a year. I was still in high school. I think I was a junior or a senior. Wow. I guess it was my senior year. Yeah, because the year before I was touring with a band called Stoneground. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
I want to get into that. So first of all, Van plucked you out of high school. I mean, not that cat, genius, but not easy to work with at all. No, but Stoneground, was Pete Sears in Stoneground?
I was with Stoneground for about a year.
Who was in that band?
Well, Sal Valentino was the leader of the band. Man, I don't remember. Tim Barnes was on guitar. There was another guy, Blakely was on guitar, and it was a 10-piece band. It was huge, and it was managed by Tom Donahue, by Big Daddy Tom.
Sure.
Who started with KMPX radio and then became the music director there, and then went to KSAN. So he was like the father of underground radio, and he was the manager of Stoneground, and they recorded their first album, and just as their album was going to be released, and I went to high school with both of Tom's sons, Sean and Tom, and so I was up at the Donahue house every day, a lot of days after school, most every day anyway, and so I knew Tom as a friend of his kids. And he knew that I was a player, and he'd heard me play. And anyway, long story short, the bass player in Stoneground was Pete Sears. And just after they finished their album, right as it was releasing, he got offered a gig in England to play on a Gasoline Alley with Rod Stewart. So he told Stoneground he needed a couple weeks off to go do this album. And so I got hired as a substitute. And he never came back, so I did about a stretch of about a year with them. Wow. In fact, my first limousine ride was from the front of Tam High School. The limousine picked me up at 10 a.m. I'll never forget it. Class was in session, so I just walked out with my bass, and nobody out there. No one saw me leave or anything. And there's this big black limousine sitting in front of the high school. I got in, and I remember looking back at the clock tower as I was driving away. I was thinking, I just don't think I'm going to be seeing much of that place anymore.
Wow, that is
and I really did.
Unbelievable. I mean,
we went and played the Hollywood Bowl. Actually, that was my.
And how old do you think? 14?
Just turned 16.
16 years old in the Hollywood Bowl with
maybe 15 actually. Now I think of it, I don't even think I was driving it because I started driving when I was 15 and a half. I had a motorcycle, so I was probably 15.
Did your brother? Again, I'm not. I just want to know personally. He was such a. You guys had a good relationship, and obviously you've already stated you're a big fan of him. Yeah. But did you feel? Did he open doors for you, or were you conscious of the fact that you wanted to kind of carve your own path? And like you said, you were hanging out after school with all sorts of cats, and you went to high school with a bunch of cats, but yeah. Did he give you a couple of breaks along the way, or did you go make a conscious effort to say, I love my brother, I respect him, but I'm doing my own thing?
Honestly, I always was kind of leery of people taking me in or getting a gig because I was his brother. If anything, I think I was a little bit leery of that, but there's no doubt it helped me that I was John's brother. There's just no way around it. It gave me a certain amount of credibility because I was, let's face it, I was 10 years younger than anybody I played with other than my friends from school. All the bands that I worked for were adults,
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I was John's brother, I think, let them not feel like stupid for hiring me. In a way.
No, I mean, I dig it, but you also had serious. I mean, I think that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. It. I was going to say you had serious chops, but nowadays, if I go see music, I mean, there's a lot of cats that are technically very proficient and they want to show off their chops. But
right.
Can you talk about how to feel the music? I mean, even some of the Huey Lewis stuff. We talked about the disco, and it was pop music, but I mean. It was emotional. I mean, you could still you feel that. It wasn't so. I mean, you can talk about the digital quality of music or the electronicization.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a time in your career early on when how you learned to feel the music?
It probably has more to do with having a classical background because I played classical music from age 6 till about 13. I started playing electric when I was 10 also, so I was playing both, and then it got really too hard to follow. It's really hard to follow a conductor's baton when you're on acid. It just traces too much. So
Wait a minute. Was this in the,
I had to bail out of the Marin Symphony when I was 13.
this was when you had the bottle of liquid all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't.
This is
right.
epic.
So,
this is
you're
epically
doing
classic.
that kind of thing, and you're not gonna. The baton just looks like a fan blade, you know. But So I think that my background in classical music gave me the security to not feel it necessary to prove anything to anybody. In other words, my role as a bassist, I think I adopted from classical music, and I pretty much have that kind of a philosophy to this day as far as what I do on the bass. And in a way, sometimes I wish I didn't have that. Sometimes I feel like I have a governor on me inside that I can't break loose from. It's like I'm always looking for what's best for the song. I'm never, if I ever catch myself trying to promote myself musically through some song, I'll bust my chops and stop it,
Wow.
It's weird.
It's interesting.
That's
fascinating.
I can only imagine that has something to do with classical background, the roles are so defined in a symphony. It's, you don't question it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, God, it was so ingrained. Yeah, we got a game on this program called Name That Tune. I want to play this tune for you right now, and then we'll come back and break it down. I think you'll be all right. We'll break it down.
I don't even know the names of the songs I play.
Just relax. We'll be good. On the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by the Stereo Hospital, the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona. And we thank them for their support. Well, I know we lost you again, Mario, but did you catch any of that tune?
I didn't do it. No. I heard it. I heard something starting, and then it kind of got fuzzy and went away. So. Well,
listen. I want you to. The floor is yours, because this is why I do my show. I'm from the Duke Ellington School of Music. It's either good or bad, and this was Open Fire with Tony Williams, and I wanted you to talk about how you began to collaborate with Tony.
Oh, you played Open Fire when Can I hear?
Yeah, can we try it again? Let's try it again.
Yeah, I want to try it again.
Yeah, we'll try it again right now.
Okay, come on.
All right. I hope we don't lose you again. Hold on.
I hope not too. I wouldn't have got it. Not in that short piece. I wouldn't have got it in no way.
Yeah, we had this part playing when we lost you that was like you were just playing in the pocket. But I mean, Tony was so. Can you just talk about your experience with Tony?
Oh God, I loved him. He was such a sweetheart. Well, it was. I started playing with Tony. Soundhole broke up, and I got my only day job working at a music store. And so I worked at this music store for 2 or 3 months, and I absolutely hated it. But while I was there, one day one of the guys said, "Hey Mario, there's a phone call for you. It's Tony Williams." And I thought they were kidding. And so I was stopped selling guitar strings for a minute and went back to answer the phone, and it was Tony Williams.
Oh my God.
And he asked me if I would do an album with him and go to play a jazz festival in Japan. And I quit my job and said, hell yeah. And so when we first met, it was at I think it was at SIR in San Francisco, Studio Instrument Rentals. They had a rehearsal place there. And, that was Montrose. I met Tony, and we met at he had rented a place in Oakland. So that's where I met him, and we hit it off. I think he liked me because of my pocket more. He was used to. I'm sure he was used to. I mean, all the guys, the bass players that he had played with, were so chop heavy, and I'm not a chops player. I'm not I'm not very fancy or anything, and so. But I think he really liked my pocket, and
did he ever? Did he ever talk to you? I mean, did he ever say how you got on his radar? I mean, he just called you randomly at a music store, or he'd say that?
That's a great question, and I don't even have an answer to that. I honestly don't. I never even asked him.
Well, it's okay. I want you to talk about what was. I mean, I don't care if it's Lenny White or Michael Shreve or whoever, any drummer. They all are obsessed and still obsessed with Tony Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, what was he doing on the drum kit? Because even to my ears, like the Lifetime stuff, what I still sometimes I'm trying to figure out why he was such a revolutionary, and I was hoping you could talk about that.
I couldn't honestly because he definitely had a unique style, and I think he really stood out in the jazz world because he's playing with like McCoy Tyner and guys like that, and he was real aggressive, and those drummers that generally were not aggressive, they were not. They didn't hit hard, and they didn't get fiery, and Tony would just uncork, and I think that's he really stood out in the jazz world because of that. He just had a very different approach to drums than any other jazz drummer. So I would assume that's how he got on, became such a point of interest to everybody, because he had the chops and he had the musical knowledge to play any of that stuff, and that's something. There's something to be said for that right there, because a lot of that stuff's not easy. I mean, I was out of my league playing with him at that jazz festival. I was just holding on for dear life, really, honestly. I was young. I was 24, inexperienced relatively to those guys. And I find myself in a band with Tony Williams, Billy Cobham, Ronnie Montrose, and Brian Auger, and me.
That's unbelievable. So, it was double drums during the show?
For most of the show.
Oh my God! That is.
So I'm just trying to hang on to the one. Really pretty much.
But
their idea of a good time, Tony and Billy, they had a hell of a rivalry, and so what they would do is each one of them is trying to see how far out they could get away from the one, away from the downbeat.
Right.
They would so all their riffs were just outer space drum riffs, and I'm trying to be a reference point, and really there were a lot of times I didn't have a clue. I just get the meter going in my head, and I just stick with it and let them find me, and they could just kind of depend on me being there when they got done with whatever they were doing. It's pretty scary.
Well, I mean, you did. Truth be told, I'm not even very happy with the mix on this Eagle track because your bass is kind of low and muddy. But
yeah.
Before, as we wrap up part one here, I mean, 45 minutes just flew by with you. But
hey, I want to tell you, Jake, I blew up every single piece of gear that I had on stage at that gig. It's the one that you're talking about. So it's no wonder the bass doesn't sound so good. I blew everything out.
Everything. But what I consider you to be not just an accomplished musician, but an inspirational character in the sense that one of the L's on my show is life, and that means overcoming adversity. And I wanted you to talk to the audience about an example in your life of overcoming adversity and how it made you stronger.
God, I wouldn't know where to start.
It's all right.
You mean that you want me to do that now, or like?
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, we're not going to wait for part two on this one. I want this. I mean, listen. Part of my show is about inspiration, and people need to know that everybody gets knocked down. It's how you get up and get off the mat. And I was just hoping you could share a story about that.
When's part two happen?
I mean, as soon as possible.
Okay.
You want to wait for part two?
Let's talk about that after I get my inspiring bit out.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek.
If you don't want, I mean,
Jake, I'll tell you. No, I can. To a person, I don't know anybody who's ever known, two or three little snippets of my life story that haven't said, "You got to write a book. You got to write a book," and probably never will. But God, and I think that the reason that people say that is that I've experienced a lot of loss and fought my way out of those holes, and so I guess I consider loss, an adversity of, pretty much the hardest ones for me have been losing people, and so for example, when I was in high school, my dearest, bestest friend who started Soundhole, he had been my band leader since I was in the 5th grade, and Dan Chalik.
Mm-hmm.
And 5:30 one morning, I got my mom came and woke me up and said, "John, your brother John's on the phone. I don't know what's going on, but he wants to talk to you." And so my brother called me from the police station downtown Mill Valley to tell me that my best friend Dan and both his parents had been murdered. And that whole morning was probably one of the worst days of my life. I had to see my friend and his parents. The police didn't know who had done it, and they were looking for ways to find out. So I actually ended up at the crime scene and saw them in the condition they'd been left, and they were all shotgunned to death.
My God, Jesus!
It was tough, and so the details of the murder aren't that important, but
I guess what I want to know from you is
hold on a second.
I'm sorry,
but here's the point is that my band leader, best friend, and guitarist, he was the guy who always brought the songs. I was a follower of his. I had never been a band leader. That was his gig, And when he died, I realized that if someone didn't pick up where he left off, we were going to, I wasn't going to get to be a musician, and my friends and I weren't going to get to be in a band, and that it was all going to go to hell. And I felt it was real clear. And that's when I eventually found a way to accept another guitarist into the band, and I learned how to be a band leader and book and manage and took the band as far as I could with what I was able to learn, which was a lot. I mean, I really learned a lot, and so there's an example, I guess, of what you're talking about.
Well, it's one of the best stories you weaved in this part one, Mario, and I want to get back on the wagon with you in May and do part two. We've just beginning to scratch the surface here.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
It sure is a pleasure, though.
Did you enjoy your time? I mean, did you enjoy it? Because I mean, this is too short. I have to jam. So
surprised at how quick it goes. Yeah, but if we get a chance to do it again, I'd love it.
Awesome, Mario. Listen, keep swinging, man, and you're an inspiration and a fantastic musician, and the lineage is there.
Okay, and I'll send you some of these jams that I wrote with Kenny and I sometime. Okay.
Is Gibson still around, the drummer?
Gibson's around. Yeah, I don't see much of him. He and the News are touring.
He's in the. All right, whatever. Yeah, we'll be in touch, man. It was I'll send you a full interview, a full audio file of this later.
Oh, great, Jake. Thanks a million.
Cheers, brother.
Take good care.
Later. You too. We'll be right back on the Jake Feinberg Show.